My name is Scott Melcher. I am the president of the 83rd Oregon Logging Conference, and this year's theme is Family, Friends, and Forestry.
And my name's Blake Manley. I teach forestry and natural resources at Sweet Home High School. We partnered with the Oregon Logging Conference Foundation to bring you 2 exciting episodes about logging. So join us as we shadow professionals working in their everyday jobs. I love that. Music to my ears. Part of logging is you blow a hose from time to time. Today, we blew a hose.
That was a serious leak, I can tell you that. So you have to stop higher on the hill to keep the boom away from those trees and still get them up there without scarring the trees.
He cuts it, he processes it in the woods.
My grandfather came out here after the Great Depression from Minnesota. His family were dairymen, and in the Depression they lost the dairy and family kind of moved different directions. He moved out here to kind of look for work. He found work in logging camps, and he actually worked for the Clemens Foundation out of Philomath. He met my grandmother. She was a camp cook, and they had 2 boys, my dad and his brother Jim. They moved to Sweet Home in 1946, and in about 1955 or so, he bought some cats and started buying stumpage sales from Willamette Industries, and just actually relogging or going over what had been logged 5 to 6 years previous. And markets changed, and the wood that was left behind at that time had then become valuable enough to go back out and log and make a living doing that, and that's kind of how Melcher Logging started.
I'm a harvester operator, so I started on the forwarder. My job is just to cut trees. I thin the trees out, coming up like a harvest plan on how we're going to log the ground. So the harvester actually grabs the trees, falls them, and then processes them right there in the woods. That's why it's called cut to length, or CTL. My dad and my grandpa were the first ones to bring cut to length thinning pretty much here to the northwest.
He is not only an operator, he's a forester, because he has to be able to take direction from the landowner as to what we call our prescription. Skidding kind of comes from the concept of dragging the tree on the ground. The forwarder is the machine that moves the logs from the woods where they've been cut and processed to the landing area to be prepped for loading.
We turn the dirt and work until the week's done. We take a break and break bread on Sunday, then do it all again, 'cause we're proud to be from God's country.
Most typically about 28 to 30 years old is a pretty viable stand for thinning, because it also has to be large enough that we can get a quality saw log out of it and actually remove a good volume per acre to actually pay for a thinning. 2 pickups starting in Treehouse Road.
Chris, why is this a little more complicated than normal?
So I mean, as you can see here, we got a habitat zone here, or a leaf tree area. This is obviously an older stand that we're having to go around. So that's why you see the main corridor here, kind of dodging the older trees and going just along it so that we can thin the stand that we actually are thinning. My dad and Brett are actually going out right now to find access, to go around, because there's younger trees underneath this leaf tree area. And so they're trying to find a cat road that'll hopefully, get us back under this so we can completely miss this area.
So it comes back to the same thing. This is not clear cutting. This is not just come in and we're going to level everything. This is a lot more complicated than that is.
Selection harvest. So we're just selecting trees that we want to go and trying to leave the good ones.
The Oregon Forest Practices Act is a really, really good place to understand how it is that we protect wildlife, habitat, streams, water quality, roads and hydraulic disconnect. In other words, getting that water in those, that runs off a surface of a road into a ditch line and putting that water into a natural vegetation. So by the time it gets to the stream, it's clean. Blake, clean water is going to be our single biggest issue moving forward, because fish need it, you and I need it. All of our streams are the initial source for drinking water for many communities, all the way when you start right here, Sweet Home, Lebanon, Albany, and into the Willamette, into the Columbia River. That's water that a lot of communities use. We need to make sure that we protect that water.
From landowners to loggers, everyone in the forestry industry cares a great deal about the environment. This is just one example of that philosophy.
So Scott, let's talk a little bit about what you guys did here with regards to water.
I walked this unit with the forester. This was an old grade that was used 27, 28 years ago. I don't know what this little drainage is going to look like in a month or two, depending on the weather we get. I mean, yeah, there's no water here now, and it may be fine, but we're still in the wet season. So we saved a little bit on the road over there. Let's put a crossing in here and put a landing back here just to protect this little drainage. And as you see today, it's now running water. When I put this drainage in, there was just that little puddle right there. You couldn't see any water running above it. You couldn't see any water running down this little gully below it. Now we've got a pipe in here. The water's running clean. We're not going to be logging across this area. So it's protected.
Now it's time to get down to business. We head out with Chris and he gives us a short tour of what the harvester can do.
Start out, you got right, left, rotation, jib boom, in and out. Here you got your steering for the machine. This is what pivots it in the middle, tilting. And then these buttons here are just a whole array of functions, from controlling the knives to controlling individual feed rollers, tilt and species. Feed motors here, and your saw buttons here. This is length, so this will tell you how far out you've processed the log. This will tell you here, this tells you like what the knives are measuring. Fire it up. Alrighty. So here I can reach out and grab a tree, and this isn't typically how I cut a tree, but you can grab it, leave your head standing up, and I can just leave it there and rotate it around whatever way I want, and then I can decide to tip it down, put it where I want it, back up so I can swing my head through here, and then we'll just process it out. This is chip logs here. Then we'll try to cut up a little bit in the trail and drop it off. For tree selection, you first you look up and you look at the crowns, and the first thing you look for is defect. So that's kind of the first thing that you go for, first obvious sign to reason to remove a tree. We'll take this one out here. It's about the smallest of the group that we can find, although it is a nice tree. Every now and then you get to cut a good one. So we got a peeler right there, 26-foot peeler. Oop, my saw was down. And we get a saw log out of the middle, 20-foot saw log, and then you get your chip log off the top. So those are your three sorts right there, pretty much.
What we see today is a cut-to-length logging system. This is a thinning system. So instead of seeing the big clear cuts, these guys come in and they thin out a maturing forest. Advances in technology have given us the opportunity to come in earlier, harvest these littler trees, make a profit on them, and make the stand increase its size quicker to clear cut. Music to my ears. I love that. He sizes it while it's all in his machine. So he doesn't have to cut it down, somebody else has to process it, somebody else has to skid it, right? It's all done with this one piece of machinery. he cuts it, he processes it in the woods.
One of the challenges in forestry jobs is that there are always hiccups.
Part of logging is you blow a hose from time to time. Today, we blew a hose.
Our other harvester operator, you always go, "What'd you break this time?" And he says he never breaks hoses, he only wears them out. Right. So we got washer and spacers on the inside. It's just loose. But that was a serious leak, I can tell you that. And I guess every now and then it's good to have one break, because then you gotta get in here and get all this brush out of here. So that should do it.
With a little logging joke and a quick trip to the shop, Chris is back to what he does best.
Part of what we see here today is, as Chris is cutting, he puts the tops, the very smallest portion of the tree, he'll leave it in the trail, but it leaves the nutrients from that tree here in the forest.
We're told to thin it to around 200 trees an acre, and sometimes if it's real suppressed stand, we'll thin it to 180. But this one, I think we're thinning to about 200. This was probably a co-dominant, but the reason it was removed, you know, whether it had defect or not, we don't know, because we're just looking at the stump, but it was growing right next to this dominant tree. So even if it was a fairly healthy tree, it would have been competing with this tree for crown. And then one of them, most likely this one, is going to end up either being really suppressed or just die in the future. This one probably wouldn't have died, but we come in and thin them out to space out the trees. So if you look up, the objective is to get, you know, good sunlight all the way around the trees so that their crowns recede no further. You know, they want to be able to just keep putting on crown, and then just later on the crowns will just start to die as they come up for harvest.
After Chris finishes the first part of a cut-to-length system, another job follows.
A harvester went in front of me. He cuts down the trees and processes the trees, and I just pick them up and bring them to the landing. This log I'm picking up is usually the bottom, the base of the tree, the butt cut. Set that over there. Right here is pulpwood. They take it to the mill and chip it. These are the tops of the trees once the processor's done, or the harvester's done processing them.
Right now he's got a grab of chipwood, and so right there he swings them and he indexes them. So that's called indexing, is when you tamp the logs in the ground like that. It's just to square up the butts. When you hit them against your headache rack, to keep all the butts even. When you're on steep ground, it makes the knuckle of the boom want to get real close to trees, you know, midway up the trees. So you have to stop higher on the hill to keep the boom away from those trees and still, you know, get them up there without scarring the trees. He's good at what he does, so he's good about watching that headache rack to where it didn't scar that tree.
After leaving Brett, we travel to the other side of the mountain and catch up with Blaine working to pick up chip logs on another job for Melcher Logging.
What we're doing, we're following Blaine out. This is the last load of the day for him. He's picked up the pulp because that's going to be their first load in the morning. So he's come back in here, he's taken all the small little tiny tops, and he's going to take them to the landing. This is his last one of the day. One of the positives about using a forwarder is that you can go out and take all of the same thing that you're going to load on the truck, and it sorts as it goes. So he's already sorted. He brought his load in. This is all pulpwood, all of it. So he's able to take big bites of it and put it in the deck. This sort right here is all hardwood. That's going to go for chips and different paper products. The next sort, and the one that he has on the forwarder now, that's all your chipwood, that's softwoods, Douglas fir mostly, and that's going to go toward, again, paper products and chips. This is being sold as tonwood, and it is smaller diameter, but still going to be used as dimension lumber. This may look like a lot of logs for a lot of people, but you have to realize in this thinning operation, they're taking half of the trees out, but it's only 1/3 of the volume because they're taking the suppressed and smaller trees. This final sort is your bigger log. Most of these came out of the corridors that they cut in order to get into the stand. This is your highest volume and also your highest dollar tree.
Maintaining your machine is part of the job. Here we see Chris and Blaine greasing their machines so they can be ready for the next day.
Pretty straightforward. All you do is just turn on the gun, pull the trigger, and run it like a drill. And then when you get enough grease in there, you'll just kind of go on to the next one and start greasing it up. And I try to do a tube of grease every other day in the boom, and then I do about a tube of grease every other day that I'm not doing this into the head in the turntable on the machine. So if you over grease the boom, you know, you'll get a lot of excess kind of laying on the boom, and that always ends up hitting your windshield. It gets all over your windshield. It just makes a nasty mess. So when the machines get a little higher hour like this, it's good to grease them a lot, but when they're new, you actually really only, they have certain hours on each grease zerk that they say, you know, one might be a 40-hour grease and an everyday grease and a, you know, once every oil change grease. So there's lots of them like that. But when the machine has just high of hours, we kind of grease them every day. So
My speech to guys when I'm training, because the most important thing we're doing in thinning is what we're leaving behind. It's not what we're taking out.
Conference Foundation and Sweet Home High School partnered to bring 2 exciting episodes about the logging industry. The first episode focused on log truck driving, and the second being a logger. There's 2 main jobs with that operation. One is the harvester operator, the second is the forwarder operator. They work in tandem to be able to bring the logs from the woods to the landing to be able to put them on the truck to go to the mill. Starting out, you'll make between $20 and $25 an hour as an operator. But as you gain experience, your pay will increase as well. And there are great benefits that come along with being a logger. The men and women who choose this profession choose it because they like being in the woods. They like the environment, and so because of that, they look at protecting it. We talked about in this episode 2 things, wildlife and water quality, that loggers worry about. They do it because they love the environment. They love streams just like this one and keeping them clean. If this is something that you're passionate about, you should look into becoming a logger for your future.